Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Comic Source Comic Boom collaborations. Your DC Spotlight for the week of November 20th, 2024. Man, this year's flown by. Continuing the all-in era. It's a pretty solid week. Not as good as last week. Last week was just an amazing week. If you listened, we had a very hard time picking book of the week. Every book was above average. Every book was great. That's not the case this week, but there are some really fantastic books this week. Also, last week, if you had a chance over on the Comic Source YouTube channel to check out our indie review, we reviewed a lot of indie books last week. I mean, last week was just a fantastic week all around. Not as many indie books this week on our review list, but go check that out. Just do a search for the Comic Source on YouTube. That's where the Indie Spotlight lives. And don't forget, we're doing our giveaways, one code per week for the next couple of weeks. Good for 30 days, a 30-day subscription to Global Comics. Which I think is the future of reading comics digitally, just based on their user interface, and they're working on getting a lot more. They have thousands of comics already, but they're working on getting a lot more, expanding the library. So certainly go and check that out. Also had a number of reviews or interviews last week, rather. Rom V came on and talked about New Gods, talked about Primer with Jennifer Murrow and Thomas Krajewski. Talked about Standstill. That's an indie book that's coming out this week with Lee Lowridge and Andrew Robinson. So tons of interviews, lots of stuff going on, super busy. I will let everybody know the interviews are going to kind of slow down for the next couple of weeks, just because I'm getting ready to gear up for a holiday season with 12 Days of the Comic Source and that kind of thing, and we'll be back full force for that. So if you're listening to us audio only, don't forget to head over to YouTube, Rocky's channel, where we do this every week, DC Spotlight. If you can, you should definitely join us, because then you can see the art, you can see our smiling faces. Just has a little bit more impact. So Comic Space Boom, ! On YouTube. If you stumbled across us on YouTube, we prefer to listen audio only. All the content comes out on the Comic Source podcast feed. Just go to whatever platform or app you get your podcast from. Do a search for the Comic Source and subscribe. And then obviously all the other Comic Source material, interviews, reviews, what have you, coming out on the Comic Source YouTube channel. So yeah, fantastic week last week, really good week this week, and maybe the cherry on top for DC, Rocky. We have been told, news has been released, that Absolute Batman, and there's a little bit of asterisk here, which I'll talk about, but Absolute Batman #1, the highest selling comic book of the year, beat out Ultimate Spider-Man, which sold about 300,000 copies. Batman and Absolute Batman, and this is including all the different, the first print, the second print, the third print, plus the black and white Noir edition. It's about 400,000 copies, a little over 400,000 copies. Ultimate Spider-Man, only about 300,000, or was it two or three? I can't remember. But I think it was about two, a little over 200,000. And that's all time. It's gone to like 6 printings. It's still selling, so it took a lot longer to get to that 200,000, as opposed to, it's only been like 4 weeks for 5 weeks for Absolute Batman. It's already at 400,000. Turtles, IDW Turtles #1 is the one that slots in at 300,000. But the caveat there is they sold 100,000 copies to Whatnot, kind of brokered that deal. So that kind of boosted, and Whatnot's going to do whatever with them. But that's a third of what they sold. But I mentioned a little asterisk. What's interesting is these are comics, and they have sold that much. And to say Batman is Absolute Batman's the #1 comic at 400,000, well, you're not considering things that are sold in bookstores or school fairs and that sort of thing, which they're still comics, right? Specifically, I'm thinking of Dogman, the latest Dogman from Dave Palicki, 900,000 copies. So in my mind, it's still a comic. I guess maybe it's not a comic book, and I know it's calculated differently and they're sold differently and what have you. But all that to say, if you start adding up all these books, right? Dogman, I don't think Raina Telgemeier had anything come out this year, but Dogman, Absolute Batman, the Turtles, Ultimate Spider-Man, and there's, I think, a couple other titles, like basically the top 6 books, across different distribution channels. We're talking about over 2 million copies. So if people are telling you comics are dying, Yeah, comics have been dying since they started, according to these people. However, that being said, I am not as optimistic as I would have been otherwise, just because of um, sort of the political climate that's going on, and this talk of tariffs and what have you. Printing costs could go through the roof. The cost of paper could become very expensive. So that is something that's we have to take this all with a grain of salt, because I don't know what the U.S. economy is going to look like come January. Well, I should probably say more toward the middle of the year, because it'll take a little while to slow down if it does, if some of these policies we've been hearing about come to pass. So yeah, it's exciting. Seems like 2024 was a great year for comics. Whether that continues, we'll have to wait and see. And the frustrating part is, I think when you look at 2024 as a year and look at the success, it's earned. It was earned by DC. It was earned by IDW. It was earned by Marvel. Marvel's not putting out the highest quality books right now, but those Ultimate books are pretty damn good. So these sales were earned. Absolute Batman, number 2, or I should say number 3. The third printing sold double what the second printing. The third printing was solicited before the second printing went on sale, because they did a 35,000 print run for the second issue, for the second printing rather, and that already got sold out before it was even printed and shipped to the shops, because of word of mouth, because the people that had read the book wanted it. It's not speculators at that point, right? So the sales were earned, and that's a testament to good comics and creators giving their all and whatever. If the comic industry takes a downturn because of governmental policies and economic policies or whatever next year, that sucks, because they had a banner year, and comics did it themselves. It wasn't because of any kind of economic climate or what have you. Economic climate didn't hurt, but they earned those sales through putting out great books. And if it takes a downturn, it just sucks, because the downturn is going to be because it's not going to be their fault. You know what I mean? So that's just kind of shitty. But anyway, what do you think about the week overall, Rocky?
I thought it was. I thought it was okay. I thought it was okay. Not as. It was still good. I mean, we're still flying high from DC all in. I mean, it's still. Like I said, you and I always trying to pick our 5 here. I mean, they're all pretty. They're all decent. It was easier to pick probably my top 5 this week than in the past. But you and I, of course, we try to be fair to each other when we allocate the comics that we're going to be predominantly talking about in our 5. And but overall, it's still enjoyable week. And I echo your comments about DC. I mean, it does feel earned. We had to wait a couple years. DC, it was clear this was the DC All In was a couple years in the making. But they took their time. They did it right. They clearly thought it through. And so far, so good. Fingers crossed. It's always after that first story arc, is the momentum going to be able to continue? Hopefully the economic climate won't significantly change in either the U.S., where you are from, my friend, or in Canada here, and the price point of comic books hopefully will stay the same and not go up too drastically, because they're already pretty expensive. But fingers crossed. Let's stay positive in the light of the political divisiveness in the U.S. And all smiles going into the Christmas season. I know that you probably have 25 more Christmas trees in your house than we do in ours, because I know you and your wife are quite into Christmas, and you're going to be decorating probably over the next few weeks.
Oh yeah, we've already started, because it takes that long to get everything up and in place and what have you. So,
Uh,
all right, yeah, well, let's go ahead and dive in, everybody. First book, one of my top 5, co-plotted by Mark Waid and Chris Samnee, written by Mark Waid, art by Chris Samnee, colors by Giovanna Nero, letters by Clayton Cowles with Chris Samnee. So I'm assuming that means Samnee probably did some of his own sound effects. And it's Batman and Robin Year 1, Chapter 2. So what I love about this book, and Mark Waid talked about this when we interviewed him about it at San Diego Comic-Con, this idea of when Batman and Robin first became partners, way back in the Golden Age, books back then were much simpler, much more white hat, black hat, 2-dimensional type stories. So there wasn't any kind of push or pull between the dynamic between Batman and Robin, and that's something that, I mean, this is Samnee's dream project, and he's the one that brought it to Waid, and then they're doing it obviously at DC together after their legendary run on Daredevil. But this idea of Bruce wanting to keep Dick safe, and Dick being young and feeling invincible, and a lot of us can sort of relate to that. And really, it's the dynamic between Batman and Robin where this book really shines. Obviously, the Chris Samnee art, it's perfect for this because it has that sort of golden age simplicity, if you will. But still really strong storytelling, really strong transitions from panel to panel, smart dialogue from Waid, well paced. So I am enjoying this book. However, I don't know for me how memorable this is going to be, just because it falls into that. For me personally, it falls into that category of, oh my god, we have so much Batman content coming out all the time. If it doesn't do something really, really different or do something really, really well, I just don't know how much I'm going to recall, if you will. Like I'm trying to, think back over the Batman content that we've read. Basically since 2020, we talked about this we've been working on this all in era for a long time, basically since 2019, sort of, late 2019, early 2020, from the wreckage of 5G, if you will, and then through the disaster that was Future State, which to me has been the low point of DC maybe for the last 30 years, maybe longer, maybe since the implosion in the 70s. The low point for me was that Future State stuff. Um, all the time in the background, us not knowing that they were working on this incredible all-in era, which has been fantastic. So think about what stands out as Batman stories in that time. It's not a lot, other than things standing out because they weren't very good, like the Future State Batman story trying to shoehorn Luke Fox into there and what have you. Um, some of the um, kind of the way the Tom King Batman series just dragged and dragged and didn't work, and the controversy of them not getting married, what have you. That happened a little earlier than the pandemic, but I mean, those are the things that I remember, right? What are the good things I remember? Well, I remember Offworld. It's not quite finished yet, but that stood out as something different. I remember Absolute Batman. That stands out as something really, really different. But other than that, there's not, the Rom V run that took in Detective that ran way too long. Like there's just not a lot of memorable for me Batman stories that stood out. The detective story from Tom Taylor, maybe, or an odd issue here or there, like the Father's Day issue and what have you. And I just have a feeling this is going to kind of go into that pile in my head. Yeah, it's recent Batman stuff. It didn't do anything that was groundbreaking or super original or what have you. So, yeah, I'll just put it on the pile, and if I flip through it, it'll jog my memory. But otherwise, it's not going to stand out. Which is a testament to how amazing Absolute Batman is, because that is something I remember. All the stuff that happens in Absolute Batman, from him blowing up buildings and driving giant dump truck Batmobiles, and the emblem on his chest being an axe and whatever, because it's just balls out. Like that's awesome. Anyway, I don't know if you have anything to add, Rocky. Again, this is not a bad comic, everybody. It's just, I don't know how memorable it's going to be at the end of the day. It still has time to get there. But I think about, again, Batman Offworld from Jason Aaron and Doug Mahnke that just went crazy right from issue one. This isn't that. And it's not supposed to be. It's doing something different, but and maybe it lands better for Batman fans or for fans of Batman and Robin, that particular era. But yeah, I don't count myself among those. So anyway, any thoughts? Anything to add, Rocky?
Well, just that I like the story that's being told. I think Mark Waid and Chris Samnee as co-plotters and co-writers, and with Chris Samnee's art, they're trying to imbue a little bit as much verisimilitude as they can for the first year of Batman with Dick Grayson. With even with child welfare keeping an eye on Bruce Wayne because all of a sudden Playboy extraordinaire Bruce Wayne is adopting a kid, so they're a little bit concerned about it. Is this kid going to be safe? They're not. They don't know he's Batman, but even Bruce Wayne has a reputation as being somewhat of a party animal, and maybe he's not the greatest father figure. And here he adopts his kid, so I kind of like that. That was kind of humorous. Well, a social welfare lady named Laura is checking out Bruce Wayne, making sure Dick Grayson's safe, and of course we know he is. Then there's his training. Then there's this new character, General Grimaldi, which is entering on the scene. This is still in the year one, Batman year one, where there's still 5 or 6 Gotham crime families, including the Falcones, and the General Grimaldi arrives on the scene. Two-Face is trying to weasel his way in there to make do some scheming. And, I think Waid and Samnee are doing a good job sort of weaving an interesting tale here. And I would encourage people to check it out. And as far as memorable, well, I mean, I guess it's as memorable as you take it. If you're a Dick Grayson fan, yeah, you definitely want to pick this up because it being him being the first Robin. So I thought, I love Chris Samnee's art. I love the collaboration between Waid and Samnee going back to their Daredevil collaboration and over at Marvel. So yeah, I enjoyed this. It wasn't bad.
All right, up next, it's the one book that's not on either of our top 5 this week. It's Batman Full Moon, issue number 2 from writer Rodney Barnes. Steven Subic handles the art, Russ Wooten on letters, and I guess Subic's doing the color work as well. For me, this just isn't landing. Again, similar to what I was just talking about, but even more so, it just doesn't feel original to me, and I'm really not a fan of Subic's art. It kind of worked for me on the Riddler year one, but it was kind of easier to separate because that was a completely different world. And I get this is Black Label and it's different as well. But everybody from Constantine to Kirk Langstrom, the Man Bat, they just look so different than any iteration I've ever seen, and I just can't get past the art.
Yeah.
The story is okay. Again, it doesn't feel like it's anything new or groundbreaking. It's okay. And if that's going to be the case, then I need the art to elevate. And the art is definitely not elevating. I'm not a fan of this art at all. So this just isn't for me. So anything to add, Rocky?
I would just add that it's got some cool moments with Batman turning into a werewolf, crashing out of the Batmobile, and him being sort of infected. And he's so stubborn he almost steadfastly refuses to believe that in the mysticism of it that he could be infected and with the lichonography or whatever, which is the mysticism involved in turning in to a werewolf with the full moon. There's clearly a love triangle going on between Zatanna, John Constantine, and Bruce Wayne. She's in the middle of dating Bruce Wayne or attempting to. So there's that. But the art, like I say, is wonky. This is probably the most goofy looking John Constantine I've ever seen. His eyes are really close together. He looks like he's a little bit slow. So the art is a little stylistic, but there is something there. There is some fun to be had here if you're into werewolves and you're into the horror genre and you love Batman. This might be right up your alley.
Yeah, Subic's art, man. The faces, yeah. Not even that their eyes are so close together. They're like beady little eyes, kind of like Jay Lee. Yeah, Jay. I mean, I like Jay. He's got fantastic storytelling sensibility. He's a really nice guy. But the one thing I don't like about his art are his faces. It's distracting. Pulls me out of the story. Subic is that, but even more so. So. Anyway, let's move on. Batman Superman World's Finest, number 33. I can't believe it's been almost 3 years of this series. Mark Waid is the writer. Adrian Gutierrez is the artist. Matt Herms on colors. Steve Wands on letters. This is on your top 5, Rocky. Give us your thoughts.
Yeah, this is probably my fifth. I'm just waiting for the pictures come up here. This is the conclusion of Mark Waid's Eclipso tale. It's really more of it's not just Batman and Superman. It's like the Justice League versus the Eclipso Horde. And one thing that Mark Waid is really good at scripting. He is really good at scripting a lot of moving parts where there's a lot of heroes and machinations going on at the same time. This is Batman is prepared. He's really good at showing just how genius level Batman is, how Batman can prepare for a battle, even with Eclipso, how it. The dilemma that they found themselves in at the cliffhanger last issue. Robin shows up, and of course, Batman had a fail-safe plan in the event that they were ever attacked by Eclipso, and it involved Batman utilizing Doctor Fate's magic and amulet, and they managed to escape that and get themselves out of that particular dilemma. And there's moments of extreme of just surprise heroism on the part of Superman. Just doing what Superman does best. There was a particular scene where Batman shows up and actually saves a fireman, and it looks really amazing. I know that you and I were talking earlier. You thought maybe the artist Adrian Gutierrez, maybe his art wasn't. People they're used to Dan Mora. Gutierrez is has a slightly different style, but I think it worked here. I actually really like aspects of certain pages of this story. The action, it was very action packed. I felt the movement. I felt the moments had gravitas, and I thought it worked really well. And there were moments where there was even one particular panel where all the heroes were possessed by Eclipso at the same time, and it really seemed like the chips were down. And Gutierrez's art really manifested how much Eclipso was possessing all the heroes, until inevitably, of course, through various machinations of the plot, which we won't go into. Suffice to say, I thought it was really. What I love about Mark Waid is that I think this was only a 3 or 4 issue long tale, and he's managed to wrap everything up in a matter that is satisfying, but also plants some seeds for future stories in the present day. That's what he's been so masterful at with The World's Finest. He's telling stories that are in the past, but he's just planting seeds that have grown, and then in the present day continuity, he can build on them in the present, and I'm sure that's what he'll inevitably end up doing, and to great effect. And so, yeah, this was it was on my top 5. I thought it was well done.
Yeah, 3 issues. It's fun. For me, like you mentioned, the Gutierrez art is where it doesn't have that kind of classic clean feel that Dan Mora art has. I've talked before about Gutierrez. He loves the ink splatter. There's less of it here than there was on Blue Beetle, but yeah, mainly it's just the art that just doesn't do it for me. But the story is fine. But again, I go back to that word, memorable. To me, what was great about Waid and Mora working together is their stuff was memorable and did have a timeless feel, and it also felt consequential, right? Like we got basically the origin of Magog. Like that's a big deal. I'm going to remember that. This is, they go up against Eclipso. Ultimately, they don't really have that much trouble defeating him, and there's nothing here for me that really grabs me. Nothing here for me to really anchor me and say, hey, this was a fantastic story because X happened or whatever. So it's fine. There's nothing wrong with it, but there's nothing in it that really stood out either. All right, so let's move on. Next book, also written by Mark Waid, Action Comics number 1076, Phantoms Part 7. I can't believe we're on Part 7 already. The joys of a weekly release schedule here. Like I said, Mark Waid's the writer, art by Clayton Henry and Michael Shelfer, colors by Matt Herms, letters by Dave Sharp, and there's a backup as well we'll talk about in just a second. But give us your thoughts on the main story here, Rocky.
Well, I got to tell you, I don't know if this is, I'll just say it. I'm only reading this for the main story. I don't care about the Supergirl backup, and I don't care about the other Superman, Ken and Khan in the story. I love seeing Superman going into the past on Krypton. I remember fondly Silver Age tales where Superman would travel back in time and visit Krypton. And I remember that World of Krypton miniseries in the 80s that I still to this day, I still have my original copy that I bought off the newsstand. I just love it. And so I really love these moments in this issue where Superman has some revelations where he needs to have his solar bands repaired, and he calls upon Jor-El's brother Zor-El, who is Supergirl's father, to help repair his solar gauntlets, which are given the ability to to fly basically, and he needs them to basically escape and go back through the Phantom Zone and return whence he came. But unfortunately, he can't do that because in order to do the repair work, Zor-El needs to access some equipment that was confiscated, and so ultimately ends up breaking into the place where he needs to find the equipment he has, and he repairs the solar bands. But along the way, I mean, this issue ends with Superman ultimately ending up back in the zone, but it's very much a character-driven journey with him getting there. And you really get revelations. You get revelations as to the character of Zor-El, even about Supergirl, Kara, and about the relationship between Jor-El and his brother. And it wasn't all, they didn't, it makes you wonder. It plants some seeds because it makes you wonder what Kara knew about the relationship between her father and Jor-El that she's never told to Cal and to Superman. It's very interesting. It's very well done by Mark Waid because, it's very obvious here that Superman himself was privy to the true character and the true feelings of the L family, not just his parents, but also his uncle. And I thought it was very well done. And it's very heartfelt. And 7 issues in, I can't wait. Personally, I'm thinking I might even buy this as a trade, and I hope the trade just has the Superman tale without the side plots, which I basically just jumped over. Mark Waid's done such a good job with the Kryptonian angle. That's really all I'm more interested in, and I enjoyed it for that issue. I put it on the list for that issue alone. I don't need the backup. God love it, God bless it, but it's not my cup of tea. And I the other issue with Connor and fighting the Kuns and the museum and the space, I guess it's humorous, but it actually it took me away from what I wanted more. I wanted more scenes between Jor-El and his brother. I wanted to spend time in the space. I wanted to spend more time on Krypton. And the fact that I wanted to spend more time on Krypton is a credit to the writing of Mark Waid and the really great art by really great art. Clayton Henry, yeah. When I think of how much I used to sort of almost not dislike Clayton Henry's art, but when he was drawing Superboy initially, back in the Future State era, I wasn't a big fan of his art, but it's evolved to a point where I really enjoy his sort of like modern day Silver Age rendition of the Superman family. It's really grown on me. So, what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I don't necessarily think that we needed more time on Krypton. I think that would have been sort of torturous for
That's
Superman.
my bias.
Yeah, I mean, it's already got to be so hard for him, like he does it a little bit. He confronts the Zoran, head of the science council. He said, "You need to be listening to Jor-El or whatever," but he can't change the future. You know what I mean? He can't prevent Krypton from being destroyed. But God, it's so tough. I did find it interesting. You touched on it. The dynamic between the L brothers, if you will, and Clark being sort of betrayed by his uncle. That was interesting. I don't know that we've ever seen such a intense rendition or version of Zor-El before. But yeah, it doesn't seem out of character, which again, testament to Waid's writing. Um, so yeah, I mean, this just worked for me. Again, nothing hugely memorable about this issue. It's not my favorite issue of the run, but yeah, the art super clean from Clayton Henry. The Michael Shelfer pages um, where it's Connor Kent and Keenan Kong. Those are just fun. Um, with Connor now being the super over admiral because he defeated the other admiral in combat. I don't enjoy the Shelfer art as much because it's different style. It's not as clean, but um, it, there's a lot of humor. It's almost like a buddy cop, like Lethal Weapon or something. So I do enjoy that
Right.
as well. So yeah, this is just a good, solid run, and I'm really curious to see where it goes. It was almost like these last couple issues with Clark having gone back to Krypton before it was destroyed and getting some context for the creation of the Phantom Zone. and why it has changed or what have you. I'm going to be curious to see how that ties in, because it's Mark Waid. He's going to tie it in to the resolution of the story. Really curious how that's going to play out. As far as the backup goes, it's become pretty clear at this point that the whole point of the backup is just who is the identity of this prisoner, but it's dragged on so long, and it almost seems like is this in some way Kara herself? Is that why she was the one that had to go and do this? Like Kara from another dimension, Kara from another time, what have you, is almost some foreshadowing. We get one of the pages where Kara's looking at the prisoner, and she's seeing the reflection of her own face. That's all she can see. She doesn't know who the prisoner is. So I just don't know. Just don't know when the mystery is going to be resolved, and kind of don't know at this point what the point of the story is. So interesting choices by Mariko Tamaki. The art by Megan Hetrick in this particular issue is okay. I didn't enjoy it as much as the Skylar Patridge art. Marisa Louise does fine on the colors. Becca Carey on the letters does a good job. But yeah, this may, again, I've talked about this before with the story. It might be one of those things where we don't, like, everything is backloaded. It's like reading a classic murder mystery where you don't find out who the murderer is until the very last page, and then it has to go back and sort of fill in everything else. Everything else has to fall into place. And I don't know. I kind of don't enjoy reading those. I don't read those type of mystery novels because that's not fun for me. So
Yeah.
yeah, this is not really working for me. But I am still reading it every week. And yeah, we'll see who it is.
Yeah, it's isn't it interesting how if you have a story that really you find compelling, it's great that it comes out every week. Like the Mark Waid, the main story with Superman and the Phantom Zone ends up on Krypton, and finally escapes. I mean, there's something happening every week, and it's go, and it's awesome because it's easy to remember from week to week. But then when you get a slow going, decompressed tale like Marika Tamaki's doing, and I realize that's the nature of the story. That's the way the plot's playing out. That's the manner in which it has to be told. That's fine, but it lacks the gravitas, and so so often these weekly tales are a double-edged sword. It's great when tales are moving fast, but when it's a slower paced story, it can be frustrating because I'm constantly reminded of this slow nature of it, and it increases my frustration. So that's why this Action Comics is, it's schizophrenic. On the one hand, I'm very happy with the main story, and then I get to the backup, and it jars me. But it is
Yeah,
what it is.
yeah. It's so it, and because it's a few. We talked about this last time. Because it's a fewer amount of pages, it has less time to make an impact, and then just when it starts to build momentum, all right, let's continue next week. Let's continue next week. So it never gets to that point where I'm pulled in, and then you end up reading whatever 8-10 pages of it. Nothing hugely consequential happens, and then you feel like, what was the point of me wasting my time reading those 8 pages? You know what I mean? So again, it may all come together in the end, and it may be one of those stories that just needs to be read all in one sitting, or at least in big chunks. So anyway, let's move on. Another one of Rocky's books. Seems like his are all front loaded here, but it's the second issue of Catwoman in the All In era. No Further Bets. Tornin Grunbick handles the scripting. Fabiana Moscalo on art. Patricio Del Pesh on colors, and Steve Wan's handling the letters. Give us your thoughts on this one.
I First of all, I want to thank the writer, Taryn Grunbeck, because I subscribed to Blue Sky this week, and she was the first creator to like one of my posts, which I suppose she shouldn't be surprised because I did a post on how much I enjoyed her first issue of Catwoman. And in any event, The Many Faces of Selena Kyle, I got to tell you what I really enjoyed about this issue and why this feels slightly different. This feels like this actually I like how this is Catwoman. Catwoman's Selena Kyle's past identities has basically there's a hit out on one of Selena Kyle's past identities, and that the old crew that she used to hang out with are basically being targeted. And she goes to Berlin. I mean, Selena Kyle, rather than going to hiding, she goes right to Berlin because that's, she jumps right into the heat of things, and she tries to locate one of her previous, I guess, co-thieves, and tries to figure out, who's got a hit out on her. Why is everyone after her, from the police to everyone? And what Grunberg, my apologies, I'm going to butcher the name, Grunbeck does so well in this issue is it really did feel like all of these hitmen, the sequence of events, you feel that the characters and the technology used through the use of social media, people are encouraged all through Berlin to take pictures of random people, and they feed the pictures of these random people through a database. So that's how that's how the bad guys locate Selena Kyle, or locate the person to take them out, to put a hit on them. And if you manage to take a picture of the correct person, you get paid money. So it's almost like it's actually a scary forum. Kudos to Grunbeck for doing that in such a way as to just show how the terrorizing dark side of social media, utilizing social media, getting the average person on the street to take pictures of random people. And if you happen to take a picture of the person they're targeting, they'll send you money. I mean, it's kind of like I thought it was kind of a little bit ingenious. It's kind of cool. And of course, Selena ultimately gets discovered. But in the meantime, you get to know something about her friend. And you also get to know something about the individuals, the mafia, the mafia family that's controlled by this sort of like this godmother. And there's the three brothers that are fighting. One of them is likely the one who's vying for power, and it's very clearly, we still don't know why the hell they're after Selena, and or her, rather, one of her past identities, but Grunbeck's got me glued into this plot line, and I think this is very well done. I think I think the art works. Kudos to the artist Mascolo. I enjoy this, and I'm really curious as to see where this is going. For those this is decidedly different in terms of pacing, tone than Tini Howard's run, in my opinion. So if you weren't maybe the biggest fan of Tini Howard's run, give this run a shot. Or if you just want something totally different, this is absolutely bringing Catwoman back to her crime noir roots, mixed in with a little bit of espionage and some good old-fashioned hitmen thrown in there as well, and assassins. This was right up my alley. I would love for this to be a movie. It reminded me a little bit of The Professional, a movie about a hitman protecting a young girl. But anyways, I thought it was well done. Do you have any comments on it?
Yeah, I'm enjoying it as well. Sort of for the classic feel of it, right? I mean, this is who Catwoman should be. Catwoman shouldn't be in Gotham City, will they, won't they, with Bruce Wayne or Batman or whatever. Like, that's not the Catwoman I want to read about. I don't like that relationship. I've gone on record saying that 100 times. This is who Catwoman is. She's out there in the world, in the world of espionage, in the world of mafia and organized crime, and ripping people off, stealing from the rich to give to not the poor but herself. Yeah, she gives to the poor sometimes, but she's wanting to live the glamorous lifestyle. She's globetrotting. She's wearing disguises. She's helping out old friends. That's who Catwoman is, and that's the feel that we get. I do like the Moscolo art, even though it's not typically kind of an art style that I enjoy, because it's a little more textured, a little more sketchy, a little more loose than I'm used to. It's not like clean, tight lines, but it works for the kind of the tone of the story that Grunbeck and company are going for here. It's almost like a little bit, it's easy to go there with this idea of her pulling off heists, but almost like this Ocean's 11 sort of 60s mod style, if you will. And I think the color, using the muted color palette, sort of adds into that. It gives it kind of this old-fashioned feel as well, which that might also be kind of informing my feeling that this just feels really classic. So yeah, I'm just really impressed by Torun and Grunbeck. I mean, not the first thing I've read by them, and super talented. I find myself enjoying their work more and more. But yeah, how many times with recent Catwoman runs were we like, well, yeah, let's sort of see where it goes. Let's give it a little time to get there, and then because it was felt a little rocky and pacing or what have you. I'm trying to remember who was it. Rom V that was writing Catwoman before Tinny Howard.
Yes, it was. Yes,
Yeah,
it was.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I'm a fan of Rom, but it took a little while to get going. And Tinny's Tinny's run probably most accurately described as uneven. Had some really great moments, had some not so great moments. That Nico Leone art was fantastic that she started off with as a collaborator. So it's nice to see somebody come in and just like know what they're going to do and hit the ground running. And it might be a testament to what you were talking about earlier with these creators on their first arc, just having had so much time to fine tune that first arc. The proof will be in the second arc. Is it still tight? I mean, again, I hate to always bring it up in comparison to the All In era, but the New 52 is the closest thing we have in recent history to compare it to. And by all accounts, that first arc of New 52 for most books worked because they had worked on it for years, but then you had to follow it up. And once they caught up and surpassed the stuff that they had been working on and had time to plan out or what have you, and they started making decisions on the fly, that's when it all sort of fell apart. So we'll hopefully All In won't have that same feel. We'll have to wait and see. All right, up next we have Dark Knights of Steel Allwinter issue number 5. Main story by by Jay Kristoff. Tirso handles the art. Wes Abbott on letters, and there is a backup. We'll talk about the credits for the backup here in a little bit. But this is on my top 5, and oh my god, it is so good. First of all, I had a chance to talk to Tirso at New York Comic Con about his art style, and I talked to him about what I said. I was like, man, the first issue, I just didn't get it. I didn't understand. I was like, man, if you're going to do black and white, why are you doing ink wash? Now I can't even see the pencil work. This guy's putting in all this fantastic texture and what have you with the pencils, but you're covering it up with like ink wash or whatever. And so he was going over and he was talking about it. He's like, man, even though it's black and white, I'm doing it digitally. And he's like using mixed media. And yeah, we talked for a good 30, 45 minutes about all the different stuff. Super talented, super nice guy. But yeah, and it was like, once we got an story reason for why everything is in black and white and we do get color, and then it sort of clicked, and I went back and then I read this issue, right? Like, obviously I've been reading it all along and I've been enjoying it more and more each issue. And then I read this one. I read this issue and I was like, I feel bad that I didn't get it in that first issue. I feel bad that I even had anything negative to say about this story at all, because it is so good. This is leaps for me. This is leaps and bounds better than Tom Taylor's initial Dark Knights of Steel miniseries. This is just so much better. It feels smaller in a way because it's more focused. Maybe it's not a fair comparison. Tom was building an entire world and trying to have us understand, and it was a huge sprawling cast or what have you. Jay Kristoff here, he gets to focus just on Deathstroke. Obviously, we have villains. We have Vandal Savage, we have Victor Freeze, Mr. Freeze, but mostly it's Deathstroke. It's Slade Wilson and his wife, who passed away earlier in the series. Who, again, I can't help as a longtime DC fan but to read these stories of these characters and then compare them to the stories we know from the Christopher Priest run or the classic Wolfman Perez or all the stories. Deathstroke had his own series for a long time. We've got Rose Wilson. We've got Wintergreen showing up here. So it does feel like a more intimate tale of the consequences that Deathstroke has made, the choices he's made, similar to, in the main DCU, how there's been so much fallout he's had to endure because of choices he's made. But here, the choices he's made, along with his compatriots at the time, it plunged the whole world into this Allwinter that allows Victor Freeze to basically rule the world. And he wants to fix that. He wants to find a way to make that right. And if that means working with people that he wouldn't necessarily want to work with, or admitting that he hasn't been the best father or the best soldier or made the best decisions or what have you, taking responsibility, is really, really interesting. So um, I just thought this was fantastic. It leans into the idea of Slade as such a tragic figure, um, which is really interesting, because I don't think that gets mentioned enough. Um, it was one of the reasons that we really liked Ed Brisson's little uh, story arc that he did at the end of the latest Deathstroke series, because it gave context. We saw that, yeah, Slade might be a bastard, but all the experiments that the army did on him and what have you, uh, you can kind of point to that. In a way, it's not his fault that he's become sort of warped, based on the experimental scientific procedures that were done and scientific methods that were used to um, give him his abilities. So I'm not going so far as to say you give him a pass for the horrible shit that he's done, but at least it gives it context and you can understand. You might not agree with the decision he's making, but you can understand why he's making it. And that feeling that, for me, has become a core part of who Slade Wilson is so present and so prevalent in this Allwinter story. And then you add in the gorgeous art from Terso, and you have something really, really special. Like, I just love this. Um, I did not expect. I wasn't the biggest fan of Dark Knights of Steel, but I thought it was good. Thought it was successful. And when this started, yeah, after that first issue, there's no way in hell I would have thought that I would have said, yeah, this is the better of the two. Just no way. You could almost go so far as to say it would take hell freezing over for me to say that. Well, hell is frozen over in this series, and I'm saying it. Like, this is
There's a reason why they call it Allwinter,
yeah, yeah, exactly. And so, yeah, I love it. I just think it's such a fantastic job.
yeah.
Um, Christoph has just done an amazing job. So, yeah, give us your thoughts on the main story, Rocky, and we'll talk a little bit about
Yeah.
the back.
Well, just echo a couple of your comments. He's done a really good job of showing the tragedy of Deathstroke and his buddy Wintergreen. I mean, to the surprise of no one, even in this Allwinter iteration of those characters, they're assassins. But there's a consequence to their assassin. They're basically hired by, I guess, King Vandal Savage or whatever he goes by in the story. I forget his exact name in the story, but he's hired by the king and to take out Victor Free, King Freeze, but they end up killing his wife Nora. And so that leads to the obsession of Victor Freeze. That leads to the Allwinter. And so in many ways, the entire tragedy of this setting, the very setting that you talked about with the black and white and the pencils and the coloring, it's set in motion because of the actions of Deathstroke and Wintergreen, and it also leads to the destruction of his family and his relationship with his wife Adeline, who died last issue, and then Rose, who a dysfunctional relationship that is finally arguably rekindled at the end of this issue as they attempt all of them attempt their own kind of redemption in a story that is very much character based and works really well, and of course topped up with with just the right amount of color, and every time color is used, it has a deep, meaningful story element to it, and the color is reminiscent of a type of magic that will ultimately, I'm guessing, will lead to the resolution of this tale in some way, shape, or form, however it may end. But very, very well done.
Yeah, just fantastic, and the backup is great as well. So let me give the credits for the backup story. Heir to the Sea. Tom Taylor is the writer, Riccardo Federici on art, Arif Prianto on colors, Wes Abbott on letters. Continuing the story of the Dark Knights of Steel version of Arthur Curry, or Aquaman. This in this iteration, raised by Jonathan and Martha Kent, which is brilliant. It's so unexpected and so different, but it works. It works because we know who those characters are. We know the inherent good that they have in them, and that they're passing that on to Arthur Curry. Black Manta having taken over the seas. This story actually covers a lot of years, as we basically start off um, with Jonathan and Martha alongside James Gordon and Amanda Waller, having fought off some assassins that Manta sent to kill Arthur, including King Shark. There's some humorous back and forth in what King Shark has to say and what have you. So that's kind of fun. Um, but once that's resolved, then James Gordon's like, yeah, I have this place you guys can go and hide out. It's a farmhouse. It belongs to my family. No one's there. You can kind of raise Arthur in peace and kind of, get away from it all. And there's a saltwater lake nearby, it's perfect for him and what have you. So kind of this idyllic situation, but Arthur, he's aware of who he is and he's aware of his heritage and, kind of going along with the heroic legacy feel of who Arthur Curry is, who Aquaman is. And even Jonathan and Martha comment on it. When he's old enough, he's going to go and rescue his kingdom. And it's not anything that he has to do, right? He's going to go and rescue these people. He's going to go and rescue the world of Dark Knights of Steel, Atlantis, if you will, because that's who he is. He doesn't owe these people anything. Yes, he's their prince and what have you, but he doesn't know them personally. He doesn't have any vested interest. He could keep living on the surface and be safe. But he's going to go and fight, and he's going to go rescue these people. Why? Because they need to be rescued, because it's the right thing to do. So really fantastic. This is the final part of the backup. We're told that he's going to return in Dark Knights of Steel 2025. When I saw that, it sort of made sense, right? This probably means that the next issue, the final issue of Allwinter, still probably be the same amount of pages, but it gives extra time, so it'll still be whatever, the usual 20, probably like 10 more, right? Like 30 pages or what have you. And they'll dedicate all 30 pages to wrapping up the Allwinter story, which I love. So, I realize, hey, this is the last part of the Heir to the Sea. I'm okay with it because that just means we get a bigger Allwinter story in the next issue. But the other thing that surprised me was like, oh, okay, so they've set it up. They've put all the pieces in place for a Dark Knights of Steel Aquaman story that can just focus on Aquaman. I'm okay with that. I'm excited for that, actually, right? Like we were just talking about, you and I both expressed how this Allwinter story is really a Deathstroke story. And maybe that's why it lands better for me, because it's not such a big cast. So Christoph gets to, focus in and explore and dig a little deeper, if you will. So I hope, my hope is that it's Tom Taylor, because I think he's done a fantastic job on this backup. But I hope it mostly focuses on Arthur Curry. Hope it mostly focuses on Aquaman, because then again, you get to dig deeper. And if Federici's on art, I'd be surprised, unless maybe that's why it's coming. It doesn't say when in 2025. Maybe they're letting him, get way ahead. I love his art, but it's so detailed and beautiful. It takes a lot of time to draw. So we'll have to wait and see if he's going to be the artist on it or not. But I'm excited for it. And yeah, I thought the backup was fantastic. I mean, the first couple issues, I enjoyed the backup more than the main story, for the reasons I talked about before. But man, they're on equal footing for me in this issue. They're both fantastic. So, what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I love the backup. It's another example, as you said, of great art complementing a really good story. And the great thing is, Riccardo Federici, he actually did Aquaman. I think he did the art on the mainstream Aquaman series a couple years ago, and it's actually did a fantastic job of it. And it's really interesting to see him draw sort of a different origin, sort of like tale in this Dark Knights of Steel iteration. Very well done, and yeah, it's. I got to make a comment about James Gordon, though. I find that James Gordon, he looks weird with a mustache. I mean, isn't it interesting that you can always tell Jim Gordon in any iteration, because he's got that porn stash going on, even even drawn by Federici. But in any event, yeah. Very well done. Great comic book, and both the main story and the backup are great. I can't wait for this. This might be another one. It's rare, but this might be another compilation where I might end up buying the hardcover. I enjoy it that much. I have to wait and see.
Yeah, I think the thing with Jim Gordon, obviously he's much younger, but he doesn't have glass. There's no such thing as eyeglasses in this world. So that's the thing where I just not used to seeing him without eyeglasses on. So.
Yeah.
Anyway, next book on Rocky's list, Milestone Universe, The Shadow Cabinet, #1, from writer Joseph P. Illidge, Daryl Banks and Ataguan Ilhan on art, Christopher Sotomayor on colors, and World Design on letters. Give us your thoughts on this.
Well, it's interesting because you and I have, I think, if I didn't, it's hard to identify how many other YouTube reviewers actually review anything from the Milestone universe. I think we're one of the few ones that we've reviewed. I think we've reviewed every Milestone comic that's come out in the last probably 3 years, I think, since we've done our collaboration. And if it's one thing, not to put words in your mouth, but I think you and I have both generally enjoyed it, but it has been, it's had at times had its questionable pacing and what have you, and some of the art's been a little bit wonky, but it is its own consistent universe. And I rather did enjoy well, I guess for lack of a better way of putting it, the Brainiac saga in terms of what led to this moment. Now, what's great about the Milestone universe is that you can actually buy this issue, you can jump on board, and it gives a synopsis of what happened previously in the Milestone universe, and it actually summarizes on basically a quarter of a page a lot that has happened in the Milestone universe, including even the Static series as well. And this sort of picks up where we've got Icon, who's sort of like the Superman of the Milestone universe. He's left the Earth in frustration. We've got this shadow cabinet is sort of created to basically combat a new group that's led by Alvin Industry, the head of Alvin Industries, who was supposedly killed but really wasn't, and he's the enemy of hardware. They're putting together a new group called System. So it's, when you think of the Shadow Cabinet versus System, it's sort of like the Justice League versus the Legion of Doom. And it's setting up its own group of villains, its own group of characters, and it's easy to get on board. And there's something about the Milestone universe. It never seems to resonate sales-wise, and I always think that it deserves a greater audience, and I continue to think that it deserves a better audience, that pardon me, not a better, but a higher number of readers than it has. It probably, Lord knows, it has a lot of competition in the DC universe, but it stands alongside them with pride. And it's entertaining. I think it's very it works. It's got there's a lot of story here, and I suppose if there's one, I guess if there's one criticism I could give of the writer Illidge here, he does his best, but he's trying to work with so many moving parts, but he does an admirable job of it, because there's a lot of moving parts here. He's got I guess that's one thing. Mark Waid is probably only the other writer that maybe does it just a little bit better, but Illidge does a pretty decent job himself here. And the way that he weaves together all these characters, and there's a surprising amount of violence here. And if there's one thing that he's the Milestone universe is forced to do, is that it doesn't have a lot of time to let the plot lines sort of grow. It's thrown at you relatively quickly. They got to wrap up their storylines, I think, almost too quickly, because I don't think they're not given enough real estate. They're not given enough issues to really let it grow. And maybe if it had more popularity and more people would read it, it would be appreciated more. But I think this is a good comic, and I continue to think Milestone is underappreciated. And at some point, hopefully, what I'd like to see, maybe if Todd McFarlane did a couple of action figures of these characters. To my knowledge, I don't think he's done that. Maybe that's what you need. Get Todd McFarlane, get McFarlane Toys to come up with a good Icon figure or something. But I enjoyed this enough, and I wish more people were reading it. And so it's definitely it's in my top 5 this week, enough that I enjoyed it. So, do you have any thoughts on it? Did you manage to read it?
Yeah, I read it. It started off kind of slow. I did really appreciate the synopsis. As you said, it does a good job in relatively small amount of space of kind of summing up what we've had from the Milestone universe overall. And then I thought it started kind of slow for the first half, but then it really picked up and it started gaining momentum, and it made a lot of sense. I really enjoyed the interaction between Rocket and Hardware. Um, and then obviously the introduction of the Shadow Cabinet. We see a character. I think that we saw him in the anthology, the one shot anthology. I'm pretty sure he hadn't appeared in the original iteration of the Milestone universe. He's a really interesting character. He has like these spider like abilities. Clearly, his abilities based on magic, and he's got a really cool look, almost like a Zorro type look. And um, so seeing him show up again was a really cool. Um, a really cool moment. What's his name? Aslan, Analan,
Anansi.
Nancy. That's it. Yeah, Nancy. So he was a really cool character, and obviously he's the one that introduces Rocket to the rest of the Shadow Cabinet, and it's clear that they'll most likely be recruiting Hardware as well. So I like where it's going. Interesting story, interesting start. But I go back to something that you said earlier, and I think it's I think it's sort of the Achilles heel of the Milestone universe, and why it doesn't have a bigger reader base. And it's interesting. Like when you think about when Milestone came out the first time, multiple titles coming out on a monthly schedule, and it just was what it was for a period of 4 or 5 years when comics were really booming. And then with the crash of the 90s and what have you, and it kind of went away, and it took a long time for them to come back. It was announced at San Diego Comic-Con, and then it even took a couple more years after that. And I understand them not wanting to kind of flood the marketplace, if you will, with so many books coming out. And I understand the seasonal approach and what have you. And so we had, at one time, we had Static Shock, and then we had the Icon and Rocket. And then I think Static Shock ended before Hardware started, or maybe two of them were coming out at the same time, maybe three at most. But then after that initial wave, then it was always kind of like one, like we had Blood Syndicate, then we had the crossover where Hardware versus Icon, with the time travel and what have you, and then had the Brainiac saga and whatever. But my point is, we haven't had a lot of Milestone material since they've come back. I mean, yeah, it's great that they can sum up sort of the entire history of Milestone since it's returned in that quarter of a page, like you said. But also you could say, well, they can sum up what Milestone's done in a quarter of a page. So, and it's been years. It's been years. You know what I mean? So you can take it, both ways. And I appreciate them not wanting to oversaturate the market. It is crowded, what have you. But when you don't have at least one book coming out every month or every other month, or at least, like let's say 8 months out of the year, it's easy for people to forget that you exist. And I appreciate that they're pushing the story forward. And so sometimes we get issues like this where this is a bit of a dense read. Like there's references to other things that have happened before. There's characters that have shown up before that are referenced here or what have you. If you haven't read it all, you could be missing some things through no fault of your own, other than the fact that you haven't, or you've read it and you've forgotten it because you read so many books, or it was so long ago. So it's a little bit of a problem of pacing, and a little bit of a problem of kind of a choppy timeline. Because again, I get that they want to get to the exciting moments, but because you don't have a book that comes out on a monthly schedule, you don't get to kind of have the little details that enrich the world and enrich the story. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I think that's the problem of where Milestone is right now. And I don't have the answer either, right? I'm not saying they should be putting out a book every month just for the sake of putting out a book if the quality is going to suffer, or if it's going to be solicited and then it's going to be constantly pushed back and be late. Like JSA. Don't do that. Don't do that. That's worse than not putting anything out, right? But I know they want to stay small and they want to put out quality stories, and I want to read the stories, but they're in a weird spot right now. And it's just, it's kind of tough. So, but yeah, I am enjoying this. I'm curious to see where it goes. I didn't enjoy the art as much as I thought. Like when I saw those two names, I'm fans of both of those artists. I thought I was going to enjoy the art more than I did. Um, and it felt like the line weights were really heavy for some reason. And typically that's not something I think about with these artists, that their line weights tend to be heavy, which when I say line weight, I mean like the thickness of the lines, especially on the figure work. And when you have thicker lines, first of all, it makes the whole book feel a little more dense and dark because typically that's in black. And the other thing is it makes the images feel like they're less fluid. It's got less kinetic energy. It feels like they're very static. Um, and I don't mean static shock. I mean, it feels like they're not moving. Um, and and so yeah, I was a bit surprised by it. Now that being said, the storytelling transitions from panel to panel are very good, and I did enjoy the amount of detail or what have you. It that surprised me a little bit. I didn't expect it to feel so kind of yes, so stationary, I guess is the word. So, but yeah, curious to see where this goes. I'm glad it picked up because yeah, a couple pages in, I was like, oh man, this is a bit dense, a bit dry. It felt like it was dragging a little bit, but yeah, it definitely picked up momentum as it went along, and I did enjoy it. So, all right, up next we have Wonder Woman number 15. This is written by Tom King. Gorgeous Daniel Sampere art. I mean, just absolutely beautiful. Tomei Morey on colors. Clayton Cowell handles the letters. We get a chance to see Wonder Woman with Lizzie. She's a little baby. She's crying. Wonder Woman's singing her a nursery song. Um, kind of like what is it? The three little monkeys jumping on the bed. One fell off and bumped his head. That's the one that most people know. You know, mommy called the doctor. Doctor said no more monkeys jumping on the bed. Except it's not monkeys in this case. It's princesses. Instead of three, there's five. Um, and it's just a lot of fun. Instead of calling the doctor, she calls the goddess, and the goddess says. And so that's the framework, and it's touching to be able to see Diana bonding with Lizzie as a little baby and comforting her and what have you. Um, but in that framework, and again, I think it's really smartly done by Tom King. We meet the five princesses, and it's sort of who you would expect, right? Like it's Cassie Sandsmark, it's Yara Flor, it's Donna Troy, maybe one you wouldn't expect, which was Cheetah, and they are out doing Wonder Woman's bidding, while Wonder Woman is at home taking care of Lizzie. Um, she has sent her soldiers, if you will, out to hit the Sovereign where it hurts. And the Sovereign, as he's done throughout, has been narrating the story, and he's talking about the way that Wonder Woman kind of got one over on him, if you will. He talks about how his family has immense wealth, and it's part of what they've used to influence American history because they can buy senators, they can buy lobbyists, they can bribe law enforcement, they can bribe military personnel and what have you. Well, in order to do that, you need vast wealth, and that's what they have. um, and so Wonder Woman sends her soldiers out to either destroy or in some way make inaccessible that wealth, steal it. So it starts off with Cassie Sandsmark sinking a battleship that has a bunch of gold, which is the majority of the wealth. um, then Yara Flor goes on a bank robbing spree in the Midwest, where the jewels of America, the crown jewels of America, are hidden within the vaults of these 19 banks or whatever it is. So she goes and does that. Sort of the portfolio, the quote unquote, I should say before that, Donna Troy steals a diamond that is so big and rare that it's worth about what Rhode Island is worth. And this was brilliant. I love how it ties in to the mythos of Solomon Grundy. The Sovereign and his family made a deal with Solomon Grundy that they would always get him released from prison, break him out of prison, whatever. He would never be in prison as long as he kept this diamond safe. But he's not somebody that has a base of operations or whatever, the most reliable guy, because he's constantly being killed. So he swallows it and he carries around in him, and whenever he passes it, I'll say, he agrees to swallow it again. And so he carries this giant diamond around within him. It's brilliant, and it helps explain why Solomon Grundy always seems to get caught and incarcerated, and then pops back up the next month in a different book. Um, and then Cheetah sort of, in a way, seduces slash tortures a guy who's in charge of the stock portfolio, all the Wall Street money, the quote unquote money that only exists on paper or in databases or whatever that the Sovereign has. And at the end of the issue, the Sovereign and his family are basically broke. How are they going to peddle influence? How are they going to bribe people when they're flat busted? They got no money. And it's I just thought it was brilliantly done. I thought it was really fun and interesting. And like I said, the artwork from Daniel Sampere was just fantastic. So I'm curious to see now what Wonder Woman's going to do next. Now that she's sort of taken away the resources of the Sovereign and his family, we'll have to see where that goes. And the last thing that I'll mention here, with apologies to my friend Liam Sharp, who until this issue had drawn my favorite version of Cheetah ever, and I loved it. And I didn't think I would ever find a version of Cheetah that I liked more. But man, Daniel Sampere's Cheetah is next level. She actually looks fierce and powerful, but also very feminine and sexy. And I've never liked the Cheetah more than in this issue. I just think she looks fantastic. So, and there is a backup as well that's also written by Tom King. We'll talk about that in a second. But yeah, you have anything to add about the main story, Rocky? I know you didn't enjoy it as much as I did.
Uh, well, Tom King is known. He's hit and miss with his. He often references fairy tales or mythological tales or stories, and in this case, it's a nursery rhyme. He incorporates those in his stories at times, and yeah, and it's not bad here. I still it feels. I still feel that I wish I would feel that the. I've never felt that the Sovereign was really a like an epic villain. I wish, and now he's very, his family's been around for centuries, and now he's broke, and so now how powerful is he? Is the Sovereign going to be able to afford to pay all those rogues? He's got Grail, he's got Dr. Psycho, he's got all these villains that he had on his side. Are they going to leave him now? Is he completely powerless? If he is defeated, wow, that was sure underwhelming. Um, you know, he Tom King does a good job here of showing the Wonder Woman family. This is actually one of the few times where you actually see all the Wonder Women together working together while Wonder Woman cares for Trinity. So literally all members, all female, the female power is really embodied in this issue, and uh, it's I got some I we can disagree on terms of how he gets the voices right, but I I'm compelled to give a compliment to Tom King that a lot of people are reading this title. I love Wonder Woman, and we were having a conversation before we went on air here that just how successful this title has been. It's selling very well. Between Absolute Wonder Woman and the mainstream Wonder Woman, it's really great to see Wonder Woman get a much needed love that she hasn't gotten, arguably in many years. So it's very well done, and I it's. I got some comments. My favorite part of this comic was actually the backup, which you can talk about first, but I have some comments about the backup. I thought it was kind of funny.
Yeah, it's called Elysium. As I said, it's written by Tom King. The art is by. Let me get to the. I flew right past the credits. Sorry, everybody. Yeah. So the art is by Kari Randolph. Alex Gormas handles the colors. Clayton Cowell letters, and it's basically it's entitled Elysium, and it's Steve Trevor. He's in the afterlife. He's in Elysium, which is paradise basically. And he's seen all these old friends, people that he served in the military with, old relatives, what have you. He can sit on this beach, drinking what looks to be a Corona, palm trees, beautiful sunset, what have you. He can eat a wonderful steak dinner with some wine. He can see his I think it's his grandmother. Yeah. He can relive moments of success on the battlefield. He can read any book he wants. He can have physical pleasure. Like the sky's the limit. And the gods of Elysium are asking him, like, we've never had anybody come to Elysium and be in mourning. This is the reward that you get for having lived a fantastic life and been a good person. You've reached paradise, right? This is what people strive for. What more could you possibly desire? And his answer is everything, right? It says everything about who he is and what he really truly cares about. He just says her. That's his answer. When eternity asks him, "What more could you possibly want?" Her. That's why he's in mourning. He's dead. He's separated from Wonder Woman. Yes, all the steak dinner and perfect afterlife and friends and loved ones and family and whatever, but he doesn't have her. Wonder Woman is not there, and for him, that's his whole reason for being. And so a really simple story in a lot of ways, but a really powerful story as well. I thought the Kari Randolph art was okay. It served its perfect its purpose. It tells that we never see Steve Trevor in the story. It's almost we're like looking through his eyes the entire time. We're seeing what he's seeing. The story's told from his point of view, and I thought that was a really effective way to tell the story. But I thought the rendering wasn't as sharp as I've seen from Kari in the past. So anyway, what did you think?
If ever there was a part of this comic book that should have been drawn by Daniel Simper, it's heaven. Elysium, it's heaven. That's where, I mean, it's supposed to be. I'm assuming it's. I don't pretend to be an expert on Greek mythology, but I'm assuming Elysium is supposed to be the version of heaven that Steve Trevor's in. I think that's strongly implied by the narrative, and I find it hilarious that he's in heaven and he's got a gorgeous woman who's a brunette, could be a Wonder Woman lookalike, who basically is trying to have sex with him, saying it's only pleasure, and he doesn't even want to have sex with a beautiful woman in paradise. He can't even enjoy the afterlife because he's constantly thinking about Wonder Woman. I do think it was a little heavy-handed when he said when it was suggested in the narrative that he's the first person to not to actually be in mourning when they're in heaven. I thought that was again I find that really hard to believe that he's the only person that's ever been there that maybe had some regrets or still had longed for a lost love from their human life. But it's quite obvious that Tom King's trying to make a statement here. Obviously, it's fairly obvious about love and about the connection to the real world. Steve Trevor loves Wonder Woman. One has to wonder, is this going to be some long played out connection that will ultimately bring Steve Trevor back? Okay, now we know it's comic books. When Steve Trevor died, okay, is he really dead? Okay, is this somehow going to be connected to his journey back to Wonder Woman? Well, I mean, the sort of like the classic trope, Tom King's version of our love is so strong that not even death itself will keep us apart. Is he destined to return? We don't know. I'm rooting for Steve Trevor. I want him to return to the living. And hey, you know what? I'm a sucker for a good love story. And I'm an avid reader of Tom King's Love Everlasting with I forget the artist names. Elsa
Yeah.
Sheridan or
Chartier, yeah.
Chartier, yeah. Now that love everlasting is decidedly, it's a very wonky love story to say the very least. But this is gonna be a love story, Steve or Tom King style, reuniting Steve Trevor and Wonder Woman. That I would actually like to see. More so than the main narrative. I mean, because he seems to be having fun with it, and I'm curious to see where he goes with it.
Yeah, we'll have to see. I know Wonder Woman, Tom's run on Wonder Woman hasn't been for everybody, but yeah, to your point, it's selling really well, and I don't know, man. It works for me. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Like, I don't have the history with the character that you do. Haven't read as much of it, so maybe
Well,
that's
like
why.
you said, I'm very, I can be kind of ornery about it. I mean, you held me accountable for my attitude off the air, and your comments are well spoken. I can be sometimes when you're too close to something, you got to be able to. I got to step back and maybe just take a breather and just let things go.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, another book on my top five: Titans number 17, written by John Layman, Pete Woods on art and colors, Wes Abbott on letters. Um, First of all, fantastic art from Pete Woods. I love his version of of the Clock King. I'm a big fan of this version of the Clock King as opposed to the like. Typically, I kind of like the old school '80s costumes, right? And in his case, it was this blue green thing, like skin tight leotard. His whole face was covered. He did still have like the clock eyes, what have you. And it was like the green cape. Um, and man, it just really didn't work. It really didn't work. So I really do enjoy this. It's almost like a steampunk version. You know, he's got the suit and the long trench coat and the bowler hat, and still has the eyeglasses with the hands of the clock on there. It just really works. Um, and so I loved this because of the way that it ties in and pulled from Absolute Power. Um, and it's I wouldn't go so far as to say it's like an epilogue to Absolute Power, but it does. Clocking is enhanced basically because of the events of Absolute Power. Like he talks about everybody getting their powers back and the bomb being removed, and he finds out he has some greater abilities and what have you, and it feels like he's leveled up, and he feels like he's leveled up, and it explains why he's able to take on the Titans in a way that he wouldn't normally in the past. You know, he talks about, yeah, in the past I'm not the guy that fights. You know, I'm the guy that uses my brain or what have you, which makes it all the more interesting when Donna Troy is able to figure out a way to defeat him, as he's kind of exploring the memories of the Titans. And it almost hurts more that he kind of loses a battle of wits in a way to them. Um, but I love everything about this in terms of what the ideas that Layman's bringing, because he's playing within the confines of the DC universe. He's doing it really well, and he's coming up with interesting and fun ideas, right? Like I think back to that Absolute Power Task Force 7 issue he did, where he was showing the Amazo robot kind of losing control because he had taken Aquaman's ability to talk to fish, and it was like the shark's killer instinct that was like overriding his. It was just a really cool idea. Um, Something that made perfect sense and was completely logical, but that nobody had done before. And it's the same thing here with Clock King and the dynamic with the Titans, and I just thought it was fantastic. And then for the first time since um, I was going to say Final Crisis, it's not Final
Dark
Crisis,
Crisis, the end of
Dark
Dark.
Crisis, yeah, the first time since Dark Crisis where Deathstroke was left sort of a shell of his former self. We're not sure how it's happened, but he seems to sort of be back to his old self, but is tired of getting his ass kicked by the Titans. And so he approaches the Clock King, and we're not sure who it is because he approaches from the shadows, and he's talking about, hey, we should team up. You know, I'm tired of these guys beating us, and you can't underestimate the Titans and what have you. They're not kids anymore. And then he stands revealed on the final page. I don't know if it will be just the Clock King and Deathstroke. I hope not. I hope it's we get an issue or two of this kind of running as a B plot, if you will, a subplot where Deathstroke is going around recruiting others, and it could be Deathstroke and Clock King next issue approaching, a third villain, and then the following issue, those three villains approaching another villain, and build up. I don't know if you would give it a new name or what have you, um, but yeah, build up a team to take on. Um, I don't suppose you'd want to use Fearsome Five because it wouldn't have any of the characters, um, but yeah, just a group of villains, if you will, to take on the Teen Titans. I think that's what I would like to see. So I really enjoyed this. Again, the Pete Woods art absolutely fantastic. Both the line work and the color work really, really good. Just an all around fun, solid issue. Um, I'm a big fan of Tom Taylor. I normally like the stuff he does, but two issues in, I'm already digging this Titans run way more than anything that Tom did. With full respect and honorable mention to the Beast World saga, which felt big and epic, but even at its best, didn't feel as good as to me as these two issues. So I just thought it was fantastic.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on?
I will say I'm most intrigued about the appearance of Deathstroke here, because when we last saw him at the end of Dark Crisis, he was he was defeated, he was being experimented upon, and he was in pain, and we don't know who was causing all the pain, who was causing Deathstroke all the pain. So how did Deathstroke, how did he get to where he's at here? What happened to him at the end of Dark Crisis? Those are questions that I'm sort of intrigued about, and I'm sure John Layman is going to enjoy telling us that backstory as his Titans arc continues. But I agree with you. This feels more like sort of like a classic Titans tale. Dare I say, even Teen Titans, and it's really great to see a more empowered Clock King, and especially to see Deathstroke back. That's a very smart thing for Layman to do, especially because I mean, I'm sure like I said, those of us who love Deathstroke know we were wondering where the hell is he. So to see him here, we have all these questions, and I can't wait to find out the answers.
Yeah, and again, that art is just so fantastic. All right, up next, this is probably, I would say, the fifth book on my list of my top five. Jenny Sparks, issue number 4, written by Tom Taylor, art by Jeff Spokes, and that includes the color work, and then Clayton Cowell handles the letters. Not a lot. This feels somewhat like a bridge issue. We get two different stories of Jenny Sparks. We get her back in 2011 on the heels of 9/11. It says New York 2011, and she's talking to this guy who's like a real estate guy and profiting off of what happened with 9/11, and gives us some context into what she sees her role as. Fixing the 20th century, what have you. We know that supposedly she died at a stroke of midnight, January or December 31st, 2000 or what have you, or I guess 1999, whatever. But yeah, some of those flashbacks showing that she's been around. I mean that famous line, we talked about it before. Do better, I'll come back and kick all your asses. Clearly, things have not been going well. She's back. Even though there's this different spirit of the 21st century, she's here still fulfilling her role or what have you. Then the other timeline is her, or the other story is her in the bar trying to save people from Captain Atom with the dead bodies of the Justice League laying around. We talked about it before. It is Black Label, so I guess they don't have to be resurrected, but I feel like they will. She's going to talk some sense into Captain Atom, but he certainly seems to have the abilities of a god. And that's his point. Like, why shouldn't I be treated like a god when I clearly have the abilities of a god? So what her end goal is, and how it parallels what happens with this real estate guy who seems to be a big piece of crap, who Jenny ends up taking to allow just this sort of everyday suburban mom to execute, because what he did and how he was buying up stuff after 9/11, and what he did with building codes and all that. Like, he was just a bad guy. He contributed to the tragedy that and the people that lost their lives and what have you. And so Jenny basically delivers him to be executed. So it's an interesting dichotomy, the two different storylines, her basically showing us that she's willing to do anything for what she thinks is right. And then the storyline in present day, where it doesn't appear that she's going to be able to save everybody. So how do you make those choices? How is she going to ultimately defeat Captain Atom? I mean, this is a Captain Atom that's as powerful, if not more powerful, than we've ever seen him before. And when you add in that gorgeous Jeff Spokes art, it's really fantastic. But all that being said, this does, like I said, feel a bit like a transitional issue. A little bit of a downbeat in terms of story. And as this is going on, the fourth issue here, I think of 6. I think there's 6 issues of this total. It's become pretty clear to me that this is going to be one of those issues of a Tom King book, or one of these titles of Tom King that is going to read way better as a collected edition. That's not always the case. Sometimes I feel like it's not that big of a deal if you read it serialized. I think with Rorschach, I really enjoyed it kind of the mystery of it. Um, I think that really worked well. But then, something like Danger Street or this or Strange Adventures, I think they work so much better as a collection where you get a chance to read the whole thing at once. So um, I think that's the case. It's gonna read better altogether. Read in one sitting, the pacing and what have you. But I am enjoying it. Uh, Again, the Jeff Spokes art is absolutely fantastic. So we'll see how it all plays out. 7 issues to go. Sorry, 7 issues total. So 3 issues to go after this, or at least that's what's been solicited so far. Maybe if I look at the solicit for the first issue, does it say? No, it doesn't. So at least 7, maybe it's 8. But yeah, really, really enjoying it. What are your thoughts on it?
I'm this issue wasn't was my least favorite so far, but I'm still remain intrigued at the. I mean, the theme still interests me. I mean, Jenny Sparks and Captain Atom, they both have similarities in that they arguably both have certainly Captain Atom has a god complex here, and Jenny Sparks has absolutely. You could be forgiven for thinking she also has had a god complex through her various adventures. She talks about how at one point she even says to Captain Atom, "Yeah, you may be God, but I'm the 20th century," and it's almost symbolic of the arrogance of the 20th century because the 20th century is often seen as sort of like the greatest century. It was the century of greatest technological change, and it's the 20th century has a reverence and almost a godlike reverence in comparison to other centuries. That's the century of change, and yet at the same time, for all the godlike technological changes of the 20th century that Jenny Sparks embodies, where did it really get us? Are we that much better as a human species because of what happened in the 20th century than not? And Captain Atom, who is, the embodiment of the worst technology of the 20th century, he purports to be a god and he could lead to the destruction of the earth. So where did all this change really get us? And so, all these themes are cool and well and good. And I'm a sucker for a good metaphor, which I've said a million times, but then there are aspects of this particular issue that sort of took me out of it, where the dialogue between the characters, I didn't quite always see the connection to the main theme, but I got to give credit to Tom King. He's making me think. And this is one of those issues where I did read like twice because I wanted to get behind it. And I'm a Jenny Sparks fan. And he does capture the voice and sarcasm of Jenny Sparks very well. I'll give him that. So I'm on board here and I'm really curious to see what he has to say. And I hope he nails the landing on this. But we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, not sure at this point where it's going. So, which is fun,
Yeah.
it keeps it exciting. All right, last book we're going to talk about in detail. Highly anticipated. I was really looking forward to this. It's on Rocky's list, but it would have been on mine if he hadn't put it on his. The Question All Along the Watchtower, #1, from writer Alex Segura. Kian Torme on art. Romulo Fajardo Jr. on colors. Willie Schubert handles the letters. Give us your thoughts on this one.
Well, I got to tell you, writer Alex Segura, I think he had his work cut out for him on this one. And because if it's one thing about Renee Montoya, she has been a character that has, to be blunt, she's always been a black label character to me. She's been a Vertigo-like character, even when all her stories are in the mainstream universe pretty much. She's always in stories that where they're so introspective and they're so character driven and they're often depressing. I mean, Renee Montoya has been through the ringer. She's lost a brother. She's been an alcoholic. She's lost lovers. She's she's
Killed
been
her
through some.
fish.
Yeah, that's right. Lost her goldfish, but she's really been through the ringer. And what Alex Segura does a really good job of here is that he actually expresses that kind of. There is a decided about shift in tone and approach to the character here because Renee Montoya even talks about how she's no longer commissioner anymore. She was fired. She was replaced by Commissioner Vandal Savage by Mayor Nakano. This was a few weeks before Mayor Nakano was killed in the pages of Batman, written by Chip Zdarsky, which we're reviewing. And so a lot's happened here, but because of Renee Montoya's past and because she's a very good detective and quite frankly, she clearly must have a reputation amongst the superheroes as being someone who's very good at what she does, and she's probably the most public of many of the heroes because she's had such a checkered, tumultuous past, and she knows how to process pain and suffering, and she's a recovering alcoholic. And I got to tell you, some of the most successful self-help gurus are former alcoholics. There's something about a recovered alcoholic is that they've hit rock bottom, so they know what it's like, and so they know how to pick themselves up. And you throw in a little bit of genius detective skills there, and you got the question. You got Renee Montoya, and the Trinity have asked her that Wonder Woman basically asked her that in the creation of this new satellite from at the end of Absolute Power, the creation of this new satellite, Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman suspect that they have reason to believe that somebody wants to sabotage the satellite. They want to sabotage the Justice League Unlimited from within. And while it seems to be intentionally vague, Segura is clearly setting up some a mystery here, and he's playing fast and loose, and he's basically saying that, well, the Trinity, they don't really know. Even Batman doesn't really know what's going on, but it's almost like they feel something is off. Somebody wants to sabotage. Somebody's sabotaging the formation of this Justice League Unlimited behind the scenes, and they want the Question to basically come and live on the Watchtower and basically check things out and investigate it. And this issue is really just set up, but it does set up in a really good way, because as a longtime reader, you and I have reviewed, we've read all the past issues with Renee Montoya when she was commissioner, and the Thin Blue Wall, and all her series, and we followed her character journey and her hero's journey, and to where she gets here. And so it was Alex Segura has clearly done his homework, because it feels almost like a natural transition. And it's really driven home when one of the people that she has to work with is Batwoman, one of her former, not only a fellow hero, but a former lover as well. And she still has feelings for Kate Kane, Batwoman. And we even get she's working with both Blue Beetles, both Jamie Reyes and Ted Kord are part of her team. They provide the tech support, and then Batwoman is helping along with the detective work. And we know that there's action here. They're attacked by Conduit, Superman's old villain, or it looks to be something's going on here, and they don't know who's behind it. The Conduit seems to be sort of like a metal construct. It doesn't actually appear to be the actual Conduit. So something is amiss here, and ultimately it's discovered that it ends with a murder of a particular challenger of the unknown at the end of this. So the murder mystery begins. So this is sort of like a classic setup where we got a bunch of moving pieces. We're introduced to essentially most of the characters involved. It ends with a murder, and we're going to be leading into a murder mystery at the Justice League Watchtower, which I think is pretty cool. And I for one, trust Alex Segura to tell us a pretty good story. I really like this opening issue. Kian Tormey's art, I think it worked very well. I thought he captured. He does a really good job with the backgrounds and establishing all the scenes and the various sections of the Justice League satellite. And we got a pretty good snapshot of the various scenes on the satellite, which is pretty cool, because I don't care how old I get, I'm a fanboy for a Justice League satellite. Show me. I used to love. I still love. Although we never quite got it in this issue. I love when they draw like cross sections of satellites, and you can see, oh, this is the Justice League, and this is this room, and this is the computer room. And I like that, and I hope we get some of that as the story goes on, because this is probably arguably the most cool Justice League satellite that has ever existed in DC Comics lore, in my opinion. It certainly looks that big. It looks cool because it houses literally it can house all the heroes. It's massive, it's epic. And not only is this going to be a grounded tale because it deals with Renee Montoya, which is interestingly enough, usually a character that she's so used to being the sole focus of her stories, for her to be part of this larger epic dealing with literally all, all these Justice Leaguers on a Justice League satellite. I think it's the ultimate irony, but also the ultimate potential cool, depending on how this story progresses under Alice Segura's scripts. So I'm looking forward to see where this mystery takes us. The Challengers of the Unknown. Why would they kill a Challenger of the Unknown? How are they involved in this exactly? There's so many moving parts. For those of us who, if you've cheated and you've read ahead with some solicitations, there are some upcoming comic books that allude to some things where this might be going. So if you want to spoil yourselves with solicitations, go ahead. But I'm not going to do that here. I just want people to get excited for this series and get people loving Renee Montoya again. What are your thoughts on this issue?
So this was a lot more moody than I expected it to be,
Yeah.
in a good way. I mentioned Alex Segura being on the show recently to talk about his follow-up novel, um, Alter Ego. He wrote a novel that was set in the 70s that was very comic book adjacent. It was about a woman that worked as a secretary but aspired to be a creator. And then we got a follow-up that's set in that same world with some of the same characters. And it's really fantastic. He's so great at writing, mystery or thrillers and that sort of thing. And this is a little bit of both. Rocky mentioned that, the Trinity has approached Renee. They sense something is wrong. It does. Again, it's one of those situations where we kind of got to take it with a grain of salt and believe what the publisher is telling us. That Batman, the world's greatest detective, can't figure this out. Superman with his senses, Wonder Woman with her magical abilities, but it's fine because it gives Renee something to do. And the question is Alex Segura's favorite. Renee Montoya question is Alex Segura's favorite DC character. So she's in excellent hands. And yeah, like Rocky said, she's definitely been through the ringer. So I love that Alex, addressed that. And he's talking about, why she's here and what she hopes to accomplish. She does have a team. She's not working on her own. You mentioned the two Blue Beetles. So yeah, even though this is a bit of a setup issue and Alex is sort of getting all the players in place, there's plenty of other plot. There's plenty of hints and clues and what have you. And then obviously the murder of one of the challengers of the unknown at the end on the final page. So, or at least the reveal of the body. We'll have to see how that all plays out. But like so many moving parts, Renee feels like she's such a fun character. And I don't mean fun and, happy-go-lucky. I mean fun in that she's so interesting. She's such a complicated character. Maybe one of the most sort of real and fleshed out characters that the DC's had. And I 100% give a lot of credit for that to the people that have worked on her, whether that be Greg Rucka or J.H. Williams or Alex Segura himself previously, most recently. They've done a
And
fantastic
Brubaker.
job of,
Yeah.
John Ridley. Um,
Ed
they've done a
Brubaker.
great, Ed Brubaker. They've done a fantastic job of making her this interesting, flawed, real, relatable character. And now Alex Segura gets to take that character and put her in maybe one of the most fantastical settings in the DCU. And it's that juxtaposition that I think is working so well. I mean, if you're checking us out on YouTube, you just see that gorgeous art from Kian Torme there of the satellite, the view of the satellite from space, and it's gigantic and it's massive and it's technology and it's wondrous. And then you've got a noir, crime noir story, a murder mystery, with one of the most grounded characters in the DC universe. So that's just fantastic. This met my expectations. I can't wait to see where it goes. And yeah, I was really impressed and a little surprised because, like I said, I didn't expect it to feel as moody as it did. So, okay, that does it for as I said, the books that we're going to talk about in detail. There is also a Batman and Robin Year One Noir edition, so that's the kind of the black and white, where you get a chance to see the artist's work a little more clearly without any colors. And then in terms of collections that are out this week, we've got the Justice League of America DC Finest, The Bridge Between Earths trade paperback, which collects Justice League of America numbers 45 through 72. That's the original first Justice League of America title. There's an Elseworld Superman story, which collects Son of Superman, Superboy's Legion, Supergirl Wings, and Superman True Brit. That True Brit one's pretty good. It basically, what if Superman, excuse me, what if Superman had landed in England, basically. We also have Green Lantern Corps by Pete Tomasi and Patrick Gleason Omnibus Volume 2, which collects the Green Lantern Corps 2006 series. Tons of issues. I'm not going to read them all off. Plus some Blackest Night stuff. And yeah, it's a massive book. 1,384 pages for $150. So if that's your thing, you can check that out. Harley Quinn Volume 2, I Don't Like Me, which is the end of the Tinny Howard run, collects issues 32 through 37. Absolute Justice hardcover. This is basically an absolute edition, so that oversized edition where you get to see Alex Ross's art blown up and you can see all the detail and what have you. We'll have Outsiders Volume 1, Planet of the Bat. This is the Hive Mind written series with the aforementioned Kate Kane, the one that was written by Jackson Lansing and Colin Kelly, and this collects the first 6 issues of that. We have the Scalped Omnibus. This is the Jason Aaron crime saga with art by R.M. Guerra. It was written for Vertigo back in the day. So
It's
it collects,
excellent, absolutely excellent. High
yeah,
recommendation on that.
it collects the whole series, like 1 through 29. And it's Indian reservations, crime noir, really, really good series. Also, the first volume of Joshua Williamson's Superman gets a trade paperback, collects issues 1 through 5, as well as the Superman 2023 annual. And then finally, Wonder Woman Volume 2. This is the Tom King, Daniel Sampere run, collecting issues 7 through 13. That's out this week as well. So that's it for collections, which brings us to Book of the Week. Not as tough as last week, but there's definitely some really worthy candidates here.
Well, you go first this time.
I will. Basically, it comes down to 3 for me, with an honorable mention for Titans. Like, Titans is really, really good too. But for me, I gotta choose between The Question, All Along the Watchtower, Wonder Woman, which was really excellent, or Dark Knights of Steel, Allwinter. And I'm gonna cheat a little bit. I'm gonna go with Dark Knights of Steel, Allwinter. And the reason I'm doing that is because I've picked issues of Wonder Woman before. I have not picked Allwinter, and I'm making up for me completely sticking my foot in my mouth with the way I reviewed the first issue. And there are more issues. There's only 1 issue of Allwinter left. There's more issues to come of All Along the Watchtower. So I'll have more opportunities to pick that in the future. I may not have, I only have 1 more chance to pick Allwinter, and I don't know how it's going to land. But yeah, for me, and completely deserving, right? Like, I'm talking through my thought process here, but this is deserving for all the reasons I said when I was reviewing it. Just such a fantastic job. This new Allwinter version of Slade feels relatable. It feels like we know him, but he definitely feels of the world of the Dark Knights of Steel. And I just thought it was absolutely excellent. So, all right, now you should pick one of the ones I didn't pick, so that one of my other picks can be on the list as well. But
Well, my top 3 were Allwinter, Catwoman, and The Question. And I really love the work that Taryn Granbrecht is doing on Catwoman. I think she's doing a really great job. However, but I will go with The Question because The Catwoman's on her second issue in, so it gets honorable mention for me. But I will go with the question because Alex Segura, I think he's nailed the opening issue, and I think he's done a pretty good job. And it's really great to see Renee Montoya again. And to be quite blunt, Renee Montoya doesn't get as much love as she should when she's just a detective. I hate to put it that way, but when she's just Renee Montoya, the detective, she doesn't get as much love as when she's the Question. So if she, hey, she's the Question now. Plus, she's hot. What's not to love about Renee Montoya? And she's in the Batwoman. Hey, I'm in the Batwoman too. What the hell? And so yeah, so no, the Purian fanboy in me, and plus it's well written by Segura. We got a murder mystery dealing with challengers of the unknown, Justice League Unlimited on a cool looking satellite, coming at the tail end of absolute power, going into this DC All In. So yeah, it's a great day to be. It's a great time of year to be a DC All In fan, guys.
Yeah, I mean, when it was announced, we loved all those things. Hey, it's Renee Montoya. It's a murder mystery. It's crime noir. It's the Justice League Unlimited satellite. Like it sounds. It's Key and Tormey art. Like all of those things. Yes, I'm in. I'm in. It doesn't just because you're highly anticipating something. It doesn't mean that it lands. Like I think of how much I was all no pun intended. I was all in on Future State. Like I remember showing you. Like I ordered every single issue of Future State, and for a lot of the issues, I ordered multiple. Like I ordered variants. Like I spent so much money. I had a stack. I'm not exaggerating. It was 3 feet tall, 3 feet tall stack of comics um, for Future State stuff because I was like, I'm gonna go all in on this. It's gonna be fantastic. I was highly anticipating. And it sucked. It sucked so bad. So just because you're highly anticipating something does not mean that it's going to land. And in this case, it did, and completely deserving. So anyway, that's going to do it for this episode, everybody. Don't forget to head over to YouTube and subscribe to Rocky's channel, Comic Space Boom, ! On YouTube. Once you're there, leave some comments. Let us know what you thought of the books this week. Ring the notification bell so you know when a new comment comes out. Be sure to like and subscribe. Also, as long as you're on YouTube, you should head over to the Comic Source. Do a search for the Comic Source, subscribe. It's where all the other content comes out. The Indie Spotlight every week, where we'll be giving away global comics codes from now through the end of the year. All the interviews, all the other content that comes out for the Comic Source comes out on that channel, as well as our audio only feed. If that's the way you prefer, maybe you're on the subway or driving in your car, what have you. Just go to whatever platform or app you get your podcast from, do a search for the Comic Source and subscribe. And that way you don't miss any of the content. So that's going to do it for this episode, everybody. Thanks for joining us as always, and we'll talk to you next time.
Catch you later.